We often think of the medieval period as a time of stark certainties of kings and castles, of faith and steel. We see it in the solid, unyielding stone of its cathedrals and the clear, brutal lines of its dynastic charts. It feels like a distant, settled age. But if you listen closely, if you press your ear to the cold stone of its ruins and read between the lines of its vellum chronicles, you will hear the whispers of its profound and unsettling uncertainties. This was an age of powerful faith, but it was also an age of deep and baffling mysterious events that defy simple explanation, stories that came loose from their historical moorings and continue to trouble the official record. In this video, we are going to journey into the heart of medieval England to explore the 7 greatest mysteries that still baffle historians today. We will investigate tales of children who appeared from nowhere speaking an unknown tongue, of a king's unexplained death in a silent forest, and of 2 princes who walked into a tower and never walked out again. For each of these enigmas, we will delve into the original accounts, explore the competing theories that have raged for centuries, and understand exactly why these questions remain so powerfully, stubbornly, unsolved. This is not the history of settled dates and known battles. This is the history of the unknown, of the stories that lie in the shadows. Number 7. The Green Children of Woolpit. Imagine it is the middle of the 12th century, during the brutal and chaotic civil war known as the Anarchy, when the reign of King Stephen was contested, and the rule of law had broken down across much of England. You are a simple reaper, working the harvest in the fields surrounding the small, ordinary village of Woolpit in Suffolk. It is a day like any other, defined by the sweat of your brow and the rhythm of the scythe, until you hear a strange, weeping sound coming from one of the deep, ancient pits dug to trap wolves. Inside, huddled together in terror, you find 2 children, a boy and a girl. Their clothes are made of a strange, unfamiliar fabric, intricately woven, but in a style you have never seen. But that is not what makes your blood run cold. Their skin, every inch of it, from their faces to their hands, is a vivid, unnatural shade of green. This is the incredible scene described by 2 respected contemporary chroniclers, Ralph of Coggeshall and William of Newburgh, who recorded one of England's most surreal and enduring mysteries. According to their accounts, the children were brought back to the village and taken into the home of a local landowner, Sir Richard de Calne. There, they tearfully refused all food offered to them: bread, meat, milk, until they were shown raw, broad beans, freshly picked from the garden. They fell upon the beans and ate them voraciously. For months, they would eat nothing else. They spoke a language that no one could understand, its sounds and patterns utterly alien to the ears of the villagers. The boy, who appeared to be the younger of the 2, seemed to sink into a deep melancholy. He grew sick, and within a year, he died. The girl, however, slowly and cautiously adapted to her new life. Her unnatural green skin gradually faded to a normal, healthy complexion. She learned to eat other foods, and eventually, she learned to speak English. When she could finally tell her story, it only deepened the mystery to an almost unbearable degree. She claimed that she and her brother had come from a place called St. Martin's Land, a subterranean world of perpetual twilight, where the sun never rose and the inhabitants were all green like them. She said that one day they had been herding their father's flock when they were drawn away by the loud, beautiful sound of bells. They followed the sound through a vast cavern, wandering in darkness for a long time, until they suddenly emerged into the blinding sunlight and disorienting noise of the harvest fields of Woolpit. Who were these children? For centuries, historians and folklorists have debated their origins. The most rational explanation suggests the story is a garbled, folkloric account of a real and tragic event. The children could have been the orphaned offspring of Flemish immigrants, who had been encouraged to settle in England, but were then violently persecuted during the reign of King Henry II. Lost, starving, and speaking only their native Dutch, they would have seemed alien to the Suffolk villagers. The green colour could be explained by hypochromic anemia, then known as green sickness. a condition caused by severe malnutrition where the skin takes on a noticeable greenish tinge. But what of the story of St. Martin's Land? Was it a child's confused, trauma-induced memory of wandering through nearby forests and flint mines? Or was it a detail invented by the chroniclers to add a supernatural gloss to their tale? Others have proposed more fanciful theories that they were aliens, or beings from a fairy dimension who stumbled through a portal between worlds. The story sits forever on the edge of history and folklore, a strange and haunting account of the Green Children of Woolpit. Number 6. The accidental death of a king. The New Forest, in Hampshire, has always been a place of ancient woods, royal privilege, and dark secrets. On the 2nd day of August in the year 1100, it was the setting for a royal hunt. The King of England himself, William the first known as William Rufus for his fiery red hair and choleric temperament, was there with a large party of his most powerful nobles. He was a deeply divisive figure, fearsome and effective military leader, but also a man seen as blasphemous, greedy, and often in violent conflict with the church. He had powerful enemies, and even his own family was not without ambition. According to the chroniclers, the hunt was preceded by dark omens. The night before, a monk had a vision of the king blaspheming God and being struck down. The king himself had a nightmare that left him shaken. As the afternoon wore on, the hunting party split up, fanning out through the dense woods in pursuit of stags. The king was left with just one trusted companion, a French nobleman and renowned archer named Walter Tyrrell. Suddenly, a cry went up from another part of the forest. A stag was breaking cover. The king, eager for the kill, fired an arrow from his own bow, but only wounded the beast. As another magnificent stag ran past a short time later, he shielded his eyes from the setting sun and shouted to his companion, "Shoot, Walter, in the devil's name." Walter Tyrrell drew his bow and fired. What happened next changed the course of English history. According to the most common account, written by the chronicler William of Malmesbury, Tyrrell's arrow struck a tree or a glancing boar, ricocheted, and pierced the king's chest, killing him almost instantly. Walter Tyrrell, seeing the king fall, panicked. Without a word to anyone, he leaped onto his horse and fled the scene, then the country, eventually making his way to France. The king's body was abandoned where it fell. His younger brother, Henry, who was also in the hunting party, did not wait to mourn or to organize a search. He rode at lightning speed, first to Winchester to seize the royal treasury, and then to London, where he had himself crowned King Henry I, just 3 days after his brother's supposedly accidental death. The royal corpse, meanwhile, was found by a local charcoal burner named Purkis, who loaded the dead king onto his humble cart and transported it unceremoniously to Winchester Cathedral. Was it a tragic accident? A 1 in a million ricochet in the heat of a chaotic hunt? Or was it a perfectly executed assassination? A conspiracy to place a new, more popular, and more politically astute king on the throne? Walter Tyrrell, from his exile, always swore his innocence under oath, but the breathtaking convenience of the king's death for his brother Henry, and the almost unseemly speed with which he seized power, has left a dark cloud of suspicion over the event for more than 900 years. It is the ultimate cold case, a suspicious death in a silent forest, the killing of King William Rufus. Number 5. The lost years of the 9th Legion. Every empire has its legends of lost legions, but few are as powerful, as persistent, or as mysterious as this one. The Legio IX Hispana, the 9th Legion of Spain, was one of the Roman Empire's most elite and battle-hardened units. Its history was long and glorious. They had fought with Julius Caesar in his conquest of Gaul. They were a key part of the Roman invasion of Britain in 43 AD. For decades, they were stationed in the turbulent north of England, at a massive legionary fortress in what is now the city of York, tasked with holding the line against the fierce, unconquered Celtic tribes of ancient Scotland. The last definitive, datable record of the 9th Legion in Britain is an inscription from the year 108 AD. recording that they were rebuilding the fortress at York in stone. And then they vanish from the historical record in Britain. Sometime after that date, all records of this legion of nearly 50 elite soldiers simply cease to exist. For centuries, the accepted story was a dramatic and romantic one, that the legion had marched north into the mists of Caledonia to quell a massive rebellion, and were never seen again, wiped out to a man by the ferocious Pictish tribes of the north. This theory, famously popularized in the 20th century by Rosemary Sutcliffe's novel The Eagle of the Ninth, seemed to explain everything, including why the Emperor Hadrian began construction of his famous wall just a few years later as a desperate, defensive measure to contain the threat that had apparently destroyed one of his best legions. However, modern archaeological discoveries have complicated this picture significantly. Tiles stamped with the 9th Legion's insignia have been found at a legionary base in Nijmegen in the Netherlands, proving that at least some detachments of the legion were transferred from Britain to the European mainland sometime after 108 AD. This has led to a competing theory that the legion was not annihilated in Scotland at all, but was simply redeployed, later suffering heavy casualties in another war in another part of the empire, perhaps in Judea or against the Parthians, after which its depleted ranks were disbanded or absorbed into other units. But the evidence is fragmentary and intensely debated. No official records of the legion's transfer or its ultimate fate have ever been found. Did they meet their end in a bloody, unrecorded battle in the Scottish Highlands? Or did they fade away quietly on another frontier of the vast Roman Empire? It is a puzzle made of missing evidence, the enduring mystery of the fate of the 9th Legion. Number 4. The murder in the cathedral. It is the 29th of December, 1170. The evening Vespers service is about to begin inside the magnificent, soaring space of Canterbury Cathedral. The air is cold and thick with the smell of incense. Suddenly, the sacred peace is shattered as 4 knights, clad in mail and armed with swords, burst through the cloister door into the church. They are looking for one man, Thomas Becket, the Archbishop of Canterbury, the most powerful and controversial religious figure in England. For years, Becket had been locked in a bitter struggle over power with his former friend, King Henry II. It was a battle of wills between the authority of the crown and the authority of the church, centered on the king's desire to try criminal clergymen in his own royal courts. The king, in a fit of rage in his court in France upon hearing of Becket's latest act of defiance, had reputedly roared to his assembled courtiers, "What miserable drones and traitors have I nourished and promoted in my household, who let their lord be treated with such shameful contempt by a low-born clerk?" The 4 knights, Reginald Fitzurse, Hugh de Morville, William de Tracy, and Richard Le Breton, took the king's angry outburst as a royal command. They had confronted Becket earlier that day in his palace, demanding he submit to the king's will. When he imperiously refused, they returned with their weapons. They found him near a pillar in the north transept of the cathedral, refusing to flee. According to the vivid eyewitness account of a clerk named Edward Grimm, who was wounded in the attack, the knights fell upon the archbishop, raining down blows with their swords. The first blow from Fitzurse sliced off the top of Becket's scalp. He fell to his knees, praying, before a final, devastating strike from Richard Le Breton split his skull, his brains, and blood spilling across the cathedral floor. The murder of an archbishop in his own cathedral during the Christmas season sent a shockwave of horror and revulsion across the whole of Christendom. Becket was immediately hailed as a martyr, and Canterbury became one of the most important pilgrimage sites in the world. The historical what is not in doubt, but the central mystery, the one that has been debated for centuries, is the question of culpability. Did the King of England, Henry II, actually order the assassination of his old friend, or were the 4 knights overzealous courtiers who catastrophically misinterpreted a flash of royal temper? Henry swore an oath he never intended for Becket to be harmed and performed an extreme public penance, walking barefoot to Canterbury and allowing himself to be scourged by monks at Becket's tomb. But was this genuine remorse? or a calculated act of political damage control. The event remains a chilling case study in the plausible deniability of power, a murder that took place in plain sight, but whose ultimate responsibility remains shrouded in ambiguity. It is the mystery of the murder of Thomas Becket. Number 3. The Princes in the Tower. In the spring of 1483, England was thrown into a sudden political crisis. King Edward IV, a formidable and charismatic ruler who had brought a measure of stability after the brutal Wars of the Roses, died unexpectedly at the age of just 40. He left his 2 young sons as his heirs. The eldest, 12-year-old Edward V, was now the anointed king, and his 9-year-old brother, Richard, Duke of York, was next in line to the throne. As was custom for a young, uncrowned monarch, the 2 princes were taken to reside in the Tower of London, which was then a secure royal palace, as well as a state presunto await the young king's coronation. Their protector, appointed by their dying father, was their uncle, the powerful and respected soldier, Richard, Duke of Gloucester. But Richard of Gloucester was a man of immense and ruthless ambition. In a series of stunning political moves over the next few months, he had the marriage of the boy's parents, Edward IV and Elizabeth Woodville, declared legally invalid, thereby making his own nephews illegitimate. With the princes thus disinherited from the line of succession, Richard claimed the throne for himself, becoming King Richard III in June of that year. The 2 boys, who had been seen playing happily in the grounds of the tower, were moved to its inner apartments, and then, around the middle of the summer of 1483, they were never seen again. What happened to them? The dominant theory, propagated by the Tudor dynasty that would later defeat and supplant Richard III, is that Richard had his own young nephews murdered to secure his precarious claim to the throne. The Tudor historian Sir Thomas More wrote a vivid, though likely embellished, account of how the boys were smothered with their pillows by assassins acting on Richard's direct orders. This version of events was later immortalized by William Shakespeare, cementing Richard III's reputation as one of history's great villains. But no proof of their deaths was ever found during Richard's lifetime, and the case against him is purely circumstantial. This has led to other theories. Could one of Richard's powerful rivals, like the Duke of Buckingham, have killed the boys to frame him and destabilize his rule? Or did they perhaps survive? In 1674, nearly 200 years later, the skeletons of 2 children were discovered buried beneath a staircase in the White Tower. They were declared to be the remains of the princes and were interred in Westminster Abbey. But modern forensic analysis of these bones has not been permitted. The Tower of London holds its secrets close. The 2 boys walked through its gates and vanished from history, leaving behind one of England's most haunting and politically charged mysteries, the fate of the princes in the Tower. Number 2. The Battle of Camlan and the Body of a King. There is no more iconic figure in the mythology of England than King Arthur. He is the great king of legend, the wielder of the magical sword Excalibur, the founder of the Fellowship of the Knights of the Round Table. But is he just a myth? For centuries, historians have debated whether the sprawling legend of Arthur is based on a real, historical figura, Romano, British warlord, who, in the chaotic dark ages of the 5th and 6th centuries, led the defense of Britain against the invading Anglo-Saxons. And the greatest mystery in this entire debate lies at the very end of Arthur's story, the location of his final battle, and the ultimate fate of his body. According to the earliest Welsh annals and the later, more elaborate medieval legends, Arthur's reign ended at the catastrophic Battle of Camlan, where he fought his final, fatal duel with his treacherous son or nephew, Mordred. The sources say that Arthur, grievously wounded, was taken from the battlefield to be healed of his wounds on the mystical Isle of Avalon, from whence he would one day return to save his people. This, of course, is the realm of legend, but in the year 1191, it took a dramatic and controversial turn towards reality. In that year, The monks of Glastonbury Abbey in Somerset announced a spectacular discovery to the world. They claimed to have been guided by a dying monk's vision to a spot in their cemetery, and after digging down 16 feet, they unearthed a massive, hollowed-out oak log. Inside, they found the skeletons of a very large man with a visibly wounded skull, and a woman with what appeared to be golden hair. Alongside them, they claimed to have found a lead cross bearing a Latin inscription. The inscription reputedly read, Hic iacet sepultus incletus rex, Arturius in Insula Avalonia. Here lies interred the famous King Arthur, in the Isle of Avalon. Glastonbury had long been associated in folklore with the mythical Avalon. The discovery was a medieval sensation. King Arthur, it seemed, was real, and his body had been found. But was this a genuine archaeological discovery, or a brilliant and cynical forgery? The abbey had recently suffered a disastrous fire and was in desperate need of funds. The discovery of the tomb of the most famous king in Christendom brought a flood of wealthy pilgrims and royal patronage to Glastonbury, saving it from financial ruin. The lead cross itself has since vanished, and the bones were lost during the Reformation. Modern historians are deeply skeptical, seeing the event as a masterful piece of medieval propaganda. And yet, the question lingers. Was there a real battle of Camlan? Did a historical Arthur die there? And was the Glastonbury find, however convenient, based on a genuine local memory of a great leader buried in their midst? The mystery of what was truly found in that grave is the mystery of King Arthur himself. Number 1. The sudden death of Amy Robsart. On the 8th of September, 1560, at a manor house called Cumnor Place near Oxford, a 28-year-old woman named Amy Robsart insisted that all of her servants leave the house for the day to attend a local fair. She was, according to their testimony, unusually insistent. Later that day, when they returned, they found their mistress lying dead at the bottom of a short flight of stairs, her neck broken. Amy Robsart was the wife of Lord Robert Dudley, the childhood friend, master of the horse, and widely reputed favourite of the young, unmarried Queen Elizabeth I. In the early years of her reign, Elizabeth and Dudley were inseparable. It was the subject of intense and scandalous speculation across Europe that she was deeply in love with him and wished to marry him. There was only one, seemingly insurmountable obstacle. Dudley was already married to Amy. Amy's sudden death, at the most politically convenient moment imaginable, immediately ignited a national scandal that threatened to bring down the fledgling Tudor throne. Her death was officially ruled an accident by a coroner's jury, a tragic misstep on the stairs. But almost no one at court or in the country believed it. Rumours flew that she had been murdered, that Dudley, ambitious and desperate to be free to marry the Queen, had arranged for his wife's convenient death. Others whispered that one of Dudley's powerful rivals at court, like the calculating William Cecil, had killed her in order to frame Dudley and destroy his chances with the Queen forever. A third theory, which has gained some credence over time, is that she took her own life. Amy was known to be suffering from what was described at the time as a malady in her breast, which modern historians believe was likely breast cancer. Medical evidence suggests that certain types of late-stage breast cancer can metastasize to the bone, causing osteolytic lesions that make the skeleton incredibly brittle. It is medically plausible that a minor fall down a short flight of stairs, even a deliberate jump, could cause a pathological fracture of the cervical spine. Was her death a desperate act to escape her suffering? We will never know. Dudley himself seemed genuinely distraught, but his actions were suspect. The Queen, recognizing the political catastrophe, was forced to distance herself from him, and any chance of their marriage was destroyed forever. The question of what truly happened at Cumnor Place that day, accident, murder, or suicides, never been definitively answered. The death of Amy Robsart remains one of the most compelling and politically charged cold cases in English history. And so, we are left standing in the shadows of history, peering at events that resist our every attempt to bring them fully into the light. A king dead in a forest, a queen's favourite, a suspect in his wife's death, children who seem to appear from another world. These mysteries endure not because we have failed to look, but because the evidence itself is silent, ambiguous, or simply gone, lost to the unforgiving passage of time. They remind us that history is not a static collection of answers, but a dynamic and ongoing conversation with the past. A conversation that is often defined by its profound and enduring questions. But while these medieval enigmas may never be solved, there are other mysteries from the past that have been cracked, revealing forgotten worlds and lost technologies that have rewritten our understanding of ancient civilizations. And everything we have just discussed pales in comparison to the story of how archaeologists, using advanced imaging technology, finally deciphered the purpose of a 2,000-year-old object, often called the world's first computer. To see how they unraveled that incredible mystery, click the video that's on the screen right now.